We want to highlight Dr. Patterson's publication here, being that she's a member of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation of the DC chapter. She wrote this publication called The New Routes to Equity, The Future of Transportation in the Black Community. And I was like, man, wouldn't that be dope to have her on the show?
No Cap Radio, this is episode 9. We appreciate y'all joining us.
Episode 9, No Cap.
That's your boy Domi Dow Jones.
Yes, sir.
And it's Eazy. We got a very important guest with us today. We're very grateful to have her on the show. This woman has earned a PhD in environmental engineering from the University of California, Berkeley. She holds a Bachelor's of Science in Chemical Engineering and a Master's of Science in Environmental Engineering. Very passionate about engaging youth in environmental issues and increasing access to STEM education. So without further ado, we want to introduce to you guys Dr. Regan Patterson.
Thank you for that warm welcome.
Sure.
Things I didn't expect to be said. So.
We definitely, we try to do what we could and research you. But we just want to know, just before we get started, a little bit about you, where you're from, what you into now, what's going on currently.
Yeah, so funny enough, I'm originally from Maryland. And so coming back to DC to work for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, for me, I call it my homegoing. Mm-hmm. But I spent most of my life in California. As you said, did my undergraduate in chemical engineering at UCLA, then moved up to the Bay to do my master's and PhD in environmental engineering. And that's where I really started getting into the work, both in terms of doing research, but also really getting into community around environmental justice issues. And so making sure I brought that into my research, but now just excited about the opportunity to really look at the policy side and what kind of things can we do and more solution-oriented work to improving the EJ conditions in Black communities.
Right, yes. Right. So you've been all over the place because you also did some research at the University of Michigan Institute for Social Research, correct? Yes, I think a lot of that research.
Yes, I did. Wow, you know all my facts.
Look, I wasn't hacking and none. I ain't figuring out nothing nobody else could.
Yes. So I did do a year at the University of Michigan Institute for Social Research. So following my PhD, I did a 1-year postdoc there, really diving into population health research and doing more so around like looking at environmental racism, racial health inequities. And again, all of that is really to inform, like, what can we do to improve the conditions in Black communities? Okay.
So you're in D.C. now, so you got homebred chicken wings and mambo sauce,
I'm like, I can't wait for post-COVID because it's like I left before experiencing go-go and all of that. So now I'm like, I got to get to post-COVID to really dive in now that I'm an adult in DC.
I know, right? It's different. Right. It's different when you're an adult. You really get to experience the nightlife and all it has to bring. So yeah. So I don't want to get too deep, but I think you got fellow Scorpio in here as well. Yeah. Scorpio.
Well, I am.
Okay. Scorpio.
Yes, I'm the last day. I'm the last day of Libra.
What was it in particular that made you go down this route regarding public transportation for Black people?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with just my background and how it brought me into this. And so for my research during my PhD, I was looking at the environmental justice outcomes from transportation policy. And so from there, you can't really look at current outcomes from current policies without looking at how these are rooted in race-based discriminatory planning. And so when I was looking at air quality, you just cannot look at air quality implications without looking at what are the transportation policies that created these disparate environmental exposures. And so coming to CBCF, it was how do we look at this? Let's look at the state of transportation in the Black community. What historically has gotten us to this point, and how do we move forward to a future of transportation in the Black community that equitably serves the Black community? And so when I joined CBCF in May, there was already this interest in like new technologies, AI, automation. And so when I was asked to identify core research areas, I was like, okay, so we have this interest in new technologies. We have Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley's Future of Transportation Caucus. And so it was like, okay, we can look at these new mobilities, but given that a lot of the inequities are rooted in the fact that you don't have investments in public transit, you don't equitably have connectivity and access and affordability of transportation in Black community, it kept coming back to public transit. So how can these new technologies really supplement and complement public transit to ensure access for Black folks?
I think you answered another question I was going to ask you about how transportation has affected the Black community historically. But I think you answered that, because when you're looking at a country like America, which is inherently racist, of course, something like transportation will have an impact on many different aspects of American life in the Black community. So I feel like it's just a web, and transportation is just a part of that web of just systematic oppression.
Absolutely, absolutely. We talk about access to employment. If you can't get around, how do you get to a job? You talk about access to education. Again, if you can't get around, how do you have access to education? You can't get to the grocery store. You can't get to your health care. So when you have COVID, particularly when you look at our Black folks in the South with even less access to public transit, how are people supposed to get to those healthcare resources? And so, like you said, it is definitely a key part in every aspect of our lived experiences, and definitely contributes and further entrenches racial inequities in this country.
So speaking on what you just said, when you were doing your research, was it one statistic that really stood out to you and was like, I know we were doing bad, but not that bad? Like, there was a few that stuck out to me.
So I guess I could go first, but I'm also very curious to hear what stuck out for you all. For me, I think for me, the one that really stuck out is the fact that some Black households can spend up to 30% of their income on transportation. It's like you think about how housing can be so unaffordable, but the fact that almost a third of your check is going to getting around,
right?
That's something to me. And for me, since I am very much rooted in like the environmental justice movement, EJ issues, it's like, for me, that's one of the statistics that shows how Black folks are inherently part of the environmental justice movement, the climate justice movement, the energy justice movement, because transportation justice is environmental justice. When you're talking about the fact that we have frustrations over car expenses, gas expenses, those are environmental frustrations, which is rooted in environmental racism. Like the fact that somebody spends 1/3 of their check on getting around, that's crazy to me. That's one that really struck me.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So how about you all? What stuck out to you?
What stuck out for me was the amount, like the percentage. It was a lot of percentages, but the percent of unbanked or underbanked, like not having a basic checking or bank account, the number of Black households that don't have a vehicle or smartphone. I thought that was just shocking, to see the percentage, because it's certain things like the racial profiling, we expect that, to be percentage higher incarceration rate and stuff like that. But when it comes down to just simple necessities like internet and cell phones and a bank account, to not have that, I thought was very shocking.
Yeah. I thought that 18% of traffic-related pedestrian deaths are African American. And also, Black drivers are 20% more likely to be stopped by police. Of course, we know that, just with the state of the country today.
Right.
But it said in Missouri, Black drivers over 90% likely to be stopped. I said, I'm not driving through Missouri. You can bet that,
The show me state.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was,
Yeah.
Yeah, even when I was moving here, just saying when I was moving here from Michigan, and so it's like driving down here, it's like, I don't want to drive by myself. And two, it's like, you don't want to go through certain states. And so you really start to think about the driving experience for Black folks. And I mean, again, when you talk about history, that's why the Green Book was started in the 1960s, right? It was like, you know where to stop, where not to stop, where you can go, where you can't go, what time of day. Like, you knew not to be in the street at a certain time of day. And so now it's like a continuation of that, because now it's like, at any point, if I'm stopped by a cop, who knows if that might be my last moment on this earth. And so it's just a continuation of driving while Black.
Right. And with that said, the whole bank account thing and stuff. So this is an opinionated question. So how do you feel that the challenges plaguing the Black community do you think some of them are more self-inflicted than systematic, being that, just not, because there's a huge difference in having a lack of resource living in the suburbs versus having the resource and just not taking advantage of them, like opening a bank account, stuff like that. So what do you think?
For me, I'm someone who really looks at root causes, and I don't think you can really separate the individual from systems and institutions. And so when, like you brought up, 17% of Black households are unbanked, 30% are underbanked. And when you get statistics like that, you can't really say it's an individual thing, right? And so then you start to think of, okay, what are barriers to access to a checking account? What are barriers to access to a credit card or a debit card? And you start to see racial inequities in who's approved, right, for credit, who's approved for these things. And then also, when you talk about barriers, you have barriers such as income barriers. So then you talk about larger systems on why would Black folks not have the incomes required to open certain accounts. And so again, all of these, for me, you can't really separate individual from the larger systems that create barriers to access and banking requirements.
Okay.
And also, this is some fact that, like you were saying, like the highways are built through the Black communities. Some things you just can't get around when they're putting it right in your face, to stop you from doing something.
Yeah.
Man, we only like people walking between us having a conversation. They go put a whole highway,
right in your neighborhood. Yeah.
Right through the neighborhood. But I was saying that, you're in and you're in a prime example of, gentrification, or, Negro removal right there in DC.
Mm-hmm.
We just wanted to know, since they're gentrifying it, are they still, putting those highways? Is it still the same plan, or are they switching the plan now because they're gentrifying? Is there a different plan?
Yeah, so that's such an interesting question, because I feel like a couple of things are happening at the same time. One, you do see these new investments in public transit systems. You see cities with these urban streetcars that are starting to pop up. In some places, they were expanding public transit systems. What is it here in the DMV, how they're expanding the Silver Line? Mm-hmm. And you get this transit-oriented development. So you do, like, on the one hand, you do see these new investments in urban transit systems. But then at the same time, now you get COVID. And so you see this unwillingness to adequately fund transit. And so here, again, in DC, they're going to cut bus service to 45% of pre-COVID levels. And who's going to be disproportionately impacted by that? Mm-hmm. And you also see that they want to eliminate 2,400 jobs, transit jobs. Who's overrepresented in transit jobs? Black folks. And so what are the racial implications of that? So I feel like you have this complicated situation around public transit, but then I don't think that you're seeing this shift on one, highway spending. You still see that federal funds spend 80% of their funding on highways and only 20% on transit. So there's still this investment in roadways over serving transit, which helps us. And then where are they going? I mean, our infrastructure is crumbling. And so now they want to spend money to just repair them, where for me, I'm a proponent of tearing them down. When we talk about reparations, when you had highways built through Black communities, they strategically placed them in like through the economic business centers of communities. So many times, like for Oakland, they put it, the highway intersected this area of 7th Street. And 7th Street in Oakland was the business center. You could talk about the same thing in Detroit. You could talk about the same thing in Atlanta. You could talk about the same thing in New Orleans. And so time and time again, they literally put highways in the economic business centers of Black communities. And so when we talk about reparations for things like Black Wall Street, I think we need reparations for the construction of highways. So in my opinion, we do need to tear them down. But right now you see these federal investments that want to repair them and continue to invest in them.
Right. And speaking of federal investments, the one bill that's been sitting that passed the House and has been sitting with the Senate. Do you remember the name of it? The bill, I can't think of the name of that bill.
Oh, the Moving Forward Act?
The Moving Forward Act. So it seems like that has a lot of funding allocated to the things that matter most to the Black community, like transportation, schools, the postal service, energy, water, etc. So how can we basically on the ground level do something or get some momentum? What can we do on this level to ensure that the funds are allocated properly and not just, going to ways that's going to disadvantage us moving forward?
Yeah. Well, first, a lot of transit funding does come from the federal level. And so I think we should be doing a lot. If you want to see the Moving Forward Act to even pass, there needs to be Democratic control of the Senate. And so we have a very important election coming up in January 5th in Georgia. And so what kind of efforts can people do to support making sure that there is Democratic control of the Senate? Or if there's not, so either way that the election goes, however, how do we push, like you said, local officials, state level officials? And so it's really engaging with the decision-making process. And so there's regional transit. And so making sure that during public comment periods, people are talking, that when there's an opportunity for a public input, that we are the ones that are engaging these conversations. So that's one way. And then also it's making sure that there are conversations with people both on the transportation agency level, as well as your local officials, to make sure that there's an understanding that you want to push for these kinds of things. Again, I keep going back to Oakland just because I spent so much time there, but there were a lot of opportunities for community engagement in some of the city plans. And so again, are our voices being heard in these conversations when there are opportunities for community engagement? And so making sure, again, we show up to those meetings and we say, this is what we want, this is what we don't want, this is where we want these funds invested, this is where these areas aren't priorities right now. So again, just making sure that our voices are heard at all of the levels of government in these conversations.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate you doing this publication, because I'll be honest with you, when Domi sent it to me, he said, yeah, we're going to be talking to Dr. Regan Patterson about transportation to Black community. I'm like, transportation to Black community? Then I read the publication, I was like, oh, transportation to Black community. I was like, this is something serious, so you know, all this stuff, of course, we know it goes on, but you did a great job actually putting it together and opening the eyes of people like this is something serious, this needs to be tended to. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So we want to show the people the publication.
Yeah.
This here for the folks to see.
Yeah.
New Routes of Equity.
Thank you.
The Future of Transportation in the Black Community by Dr. Regan F. Patterson. Yeah, we make sure they see that.
Yeah, we'll put the link in
there. Yeah, we'll put the link in there. make sure they read that. But I really wanted to ask those questions to, just in case the people that can't read it or couldn't read it, to basically get the gist of what it was about and the seriousness of it. And, we definitely got to fight for, equality. And that's why we want to recognize folks like yourself that are out here doing the work and, provide these platforms to share the knowledge with more people. So once again, thank you for coming on the show. But before we go, you got to do the no cap trivia. What we're gonna do is we're gonna ask you a question, and then it's a true or false, and you say whether it's cap or no cap. All right, so here we go.
Okay.
Might be easy.
No, it might be because you're an expert on it, but it's the perfect one for this episode. It pertains to transportation, and it shows you like this goes back, right? Mm-hmm. So Rosa Parks was the first Black woman to refuse to give up her seat on public transit. Cap or no cap?
No.
Kathy, Domi. She said no.
No? You say no? Say cap?
She does get the most credit. No cap. She gets the most credit, but no. There were folks coming before her. Even little known like Ida B. Wells, way before her.
Yeah.
And so
well, you want it, so we gotta
had begun a long time.
Yeah, you want it, so we gotta send you a no cap gift bag or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, hey, okay.
Yeah, we should have known we couldn't stomp you on that one. Yeah. Once again, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
And hopefully, we'll be able to speak again. And
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining. But we'll be in contact with you soon, and we'd love to have you back.
Yes, anytime. It was fun talking with y'all.
Likewise. All right. Take care.
Hey, what you think?
I think it went well.
I think so too, man. I think we got enough to, edit, and it went good, bro.
Yeah, I think it went well.
The only thing is, it's the questions that, because once you get to going, you know what I'm saying?
You can't stop.
You can't stop, but see, I didn't ask this question because I felt you already asked the question.
What was it?
What made you approach the issue in particular? Ain't that the first question you asked her? What made you look into this?
Yeah, I think we definitely covered that.
I love to see our guests, bro, just enjoy the show. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It make you feel good. Like she enjoyed being on here. So
I think so.
Yeah, that's honestly that's the most important part.
I got some really good no cap trivia questions that I'm gonna stomp y'all with. So we'll start that next episode because I had a good one. I look, if anybody but her would I'm telling you, she was sharp, man.
Yeah.
Like you say, I was like, she an expert in the field, man. I don't know if we could get her with it.
Yeah, but we definitely gonna get that going. So y'all be ready, man. If you want some of this no cap merchandise we got here.
Yeah, man. We gonna get the gift bags out, starting with Dr. Patterson, and I think y'all gonna like them, man, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is No Cap Radio, man. Hope y'all enjoyed the show and hope y'all invest in the future of transportation in the Black community. Peace and love. No cap.
Yo.
Now this is what you call finesse.
Riding down Jefferson Davis.
We ride.
On my way to go bless the babies.
Bless up.
Just like me, my money matured.
Okay.
Don't thank me, thank the Lord.
Thank God.
Mama told me it'd be nice like this. Following my intuition.
That's right.
Real enough to make commitment.
Okay.
Fake enough to pay tuition.
Hey.
Just cause I believe in ambition.
Okay.
Got the condo in addition.
All right.
Got the endo in efficiency. Got extendos in the kitchen. Got the gourmet on the dishes.
You bet.
Got the concierge for assistance.
I got
the Wi-Fi and encryption.
Let's go.
If he holler
harder than I must have missed them. I've been through so many of these cars. I've been through so many of these broads. I've been through so many of these hundreds. But still it's not enough. I've been through so many of these seals. I've been through so many of these pills. Amenities come with the crib. But still it's not enough for 'em. I've been through so many of these problems. I've been through so many of these bottles. I've been through so many of these dollars. But still it's not enough. I'm making a hell of a salary. I know that my grandma be proud of me. My closet look like the gallery. What will it take just to feel like we eatin'? When cause of your race got you feeling uneasy? How far this take just to feel like we even? Quantity. Obey the Lord without reading Deuteronomy. Waiting, she shape break the laws of geometry. Know that it's right, but that thing keep on calling me. Pardon me. Let's slow up the floor up a little. 10 fingers, I throw up the middle. I flip it and go off the mental. I write it, it's so monumental. So many hits, so hard to miss them. I strike them like lightning, Mike Tyson. The millions, I go hard to get them. I'm Mike on the mic in the gym. I feel my esteem reaching 10. Ain't rich till his team rich as him. My cup and my hat to the brim. My destiny wrote it in pen. My bankroll just got a twin. I failed to get to the chin. My bankroll just got a twin. I've been through so many of these cars. I've been through so many of these broads. I've been through so many of these hundreds. But still it's not enough. I've been through so many of these seals. I've been through so many of these pills. Amenities come with the crib. But still it's not enough for 'em. I've been through so many of these problems. I've been through so many of these bottles. I've been through so many of these dollars. But still it's not enough. I'm